I stood silently in front of the hotel room door, my hand tightly holding the small box containing the 10th wedding anniversary gift. The clock beside me ticked by as if to tease me, and my heart was filled with a feeling of excitement mixed with anxiety. Emily, the woman I loved more than myself, was on the other side of this door. I had flown hundreds of miles, overcome busy work to create a special surprise, hoping that our love would be rekindled after the cold days. I took a deep breath, feeling everything around me go silent, except for the strong pounding of my heart in my chest. Emily will be surprised, I thought, a small smile tugging at my lips. My hand touched the doorknob, and before I could knock, I heard laughter from inside. A laugh that was familiar, yet strangely unfamiliar. It was Emily's laugh, but mixed with another man's voice. I paused. Probably a colleague discussing work, I assured myself. But the sweet, friendly voice kept ringing, bringing with it a stab of doubt into my heart. I decided not to knock, but instead turned the doorknob gently. The door swung open, revealing a scene I would never forget. Emily was sitting on the sofa by the window, her face radiant, her eyes sparkling in the hotel lights. But what took my breath away was the sight of Jack, her colleague, sitting next to her, his hand gently placed on her shoulder. They both leaned down, and before I could say a word, they shared a kiss, sweet and full of love. It felt like time had stopped. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it would burst at any moment. All the sounds around me faded away, leaving only the images of the two people I once trusted. The gift in my hand fell to the floor with a small clack, but it was enough to startle Emily and make her turn around. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and in that moment I realized no amount of explanation could save this situation. Alex? She called my name, her voice trembling, but I couldn't answer. I felt like the words were stuck in my throat. Jack quickly stood up, his face showing confusion. I think I should go, he stammered, and without waiting for a response from me or Emily, he left the room in a hurry. Emily walked toward me, but each step she took felt like a knife cutting into my heart. Alex, I can explain. This isn't what you think, she said, but I just stood there, not moving, not saying a word. My eyes on her no longer saw the woman I'd loved for the past 10 years. Instead, I saw a stranger, a traitor. Explain? I finally said, my voice hoarse. Explain why my wife kissed a coworker on our 10th anniversary? Do you think any explanation would make this better, Emily? She didn't answer. I saw the regret in her eyes, but it didn't calm me. I bent down to pick up the gift box that had fallen to the floor, opening it to reveal the bracelet I'd carefully picked out for her, engraved with the words, "Forever and always." A promise, now a painful irony. I thought this gift would remind you of us, of what we've built together over the past 10 years. But I guess I'm a fool, right? I put the box on the table, turned, and walked away before she could say anything more. As I walked down the hallway, I felt disoriented. Every step was heavy, every breath a struggle. It felt like my world had been torn apart, beyond repair. I didn't look back, because I knew that if I did, I wouldn't be strong enough to keep going. The elevator doors closed in front of me, and I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. But in that moment, I knew that the only thing I could do now was to keep going, even if the road ahead was dark and lost. I closed my eyes, trying to calm my breathing, as I sat quietly on the sofa in the hotel room. The feelings of pain and resentment kept coming back, but at the same time, the memories of our beautiful days also appeared clearly. Perhaps what hurt me the most was not Emily's betrayal, but the huge contrast between what we had and what I had just witnessed. I remember the first time I met Emily. It was a professional conference where companies big and small came to seek cooperation opportunities. At that time, I was just a young architect, full of ambition but also a bit shy. Emily appeared like a bright ray of sunshine in the crowded room. She was a sales representative of a large company, wearing an elegant office dress but still exuding natural charm. Her eyes lit up every time she spoke. Her radiant smile seemed to be able to melt any heart. It took all my courage to approach her. "Hi, I'm Alex. I think you're really engaging," I said, feeling my face flush as I realized my voice was shaking. But Emily just smiled, a friendly smile that put me at ease. We chatted for a while, and I realized that she was not only beautiful, but also very intelligent. Emily didn't hesitate to share her passion for her work and her big dreams. After the seminar, I mustered up the courage to ask her out for coffee. To my surprise, she accepted. Our first date took place at a small roadside cafe, but it was the beginning of a relationship that I believed would last forever. Emily shared her struggles to get ahead in her career, and I felt like I had found someone who was a true soulmate. After only 6 months of dating, I proposed to her. It was a beautiful sunset. As we walked along the beach, Emily cried when I got down on one knee, and I will never forget the look in her eyes, so full of joy. We were married 4 months later and began what I thought was a perfect family life. The first years together were the best of my life. We shared so many memorable moments, luxurious trips, simple evenings watching movies, cooking together in the kitchen, laughing like kids. Emily was my biggest source of motivation. Whenever I felt pressured at work, just seeing her smile made everything seem easier. My job was getting better and better, and Emily was also advancing rapidly in her career. I was proud of her, the strong and determined woman I loved. I used to think that we were a perfect couple, that nothing could break the bond between us. But perhaps I was too confident. Looking back, I realized that those happy days passed too quickly, like a beautiful dream that I could not hold on to. The first signs of change I ignored, or perhaps I did not want to believe. And now, when everything has collapsed, I understand that I was wrong. The changes in our relationship did not happen suddenly. They started out small, subtle, so much so that I didn't notice them or want to acknowledge them. But now, sitting alone in this cold hotel room, I can recall every detail, every sign that I had missed. It all started when Emily got a new job at a larger company where she worked under Jack, the man I had just seen in the hotel room with her. At first, I was happy and proud of her promotion. The new job seemed challenging, but also full of opportunities. I thought it would be a good move for both of us. But within the first few weeks, I noticed a change in Emily. She was coming home later, sometimes bringing work to dinner, something she had never done before. Our conversations became brief and fragmented, replaced by discussions about the projects she was facing. Jack said this project requires total dedication, she explained. Whenever I gently reminded her that she was spending too much time in the office, I tried to support Emily, thinking it was just a stressful period at work. But one day, when I accidentally opened the locker in her car to look for her insurance papers, I found a carefully wrapped bouquet of red roses. "Who gave you the flowers?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Emily just smiled slightly. "Oh, it was a gift from a colleague. Everyone in the office received it. It was just a word of encouragement." The answer sounded reasonable, but ripples of doubt began to appear in my heart. As time went on, the distance between us grew wider. Emily often spent her weekends working. Our previous evenings together, where we would watch movies or just talk, were replaced by the sound of her typing away in her office. I tried to pull her back, suggesting we go out to dinner or plan a short vacation. But Emily always had an excuse to say no. "I'm really busy, Alex. We can do it later, when I'm free," she said, not noticing the disappointment in my eyes. One night, when she came home later than usual, I decided to confront my feelings. "Emily, is something wrong? You seem a lot more distant," I asked. She looked at me for a long moment before replying, "Nothing, Alex. I just want to prove myself in my new job. You understand, right?" I nodded, though I still felt uneasy. Then there was another time when I noticed she was spending more time on her appearance before going to work. Emily had always been pretty, but now she spent more time choosing outfits and putting on makeup, something she had never paid much attention to before. When I jokingly said, "Your coworkers will be impressed," she just smiled and didn't reply. The most memorable thing happened on my birthday, just a month before our 10th wedding anniversary. I had prepared a special dinner at home, hoping that we would have time to bond, but Emily called to say that she had to stay at the office to finish a project. "It's just one night, Alex. We'll make it up later, I promise," she said over the phone. I sat alone in the dining room, looking at the cake I'd bought, feeling empty inside. The distance was not only in her actions, but also in her eyes and voice. Every time I tried to touch her hand or hug her, Emily would avoid me, saying she was tired. Conversations also gradually lost their warmth, replaced by short, indifferent answers. I've always believed that sometimes A little surprise can change everything. Our love, even after 10 years, is still worth fighting for. That's the thought that led me to make a bold decision to organize a special trip, a surprise romantic dinner to celebrate our wedding anniversary. I hoped that this would help Emily remember what we had, the beautiful memories, and why we chose each other in the first place. Emily said she would be traveling for work on our anniversary. At first, I was disappointed, but instead of complaining or arguing, I quietly made plans. Okay, I thought. If she couldn't be home to celebrate with me, I would go to her. I booked a flight to the city where Emily worked, rented a hotel room near where she was staying, and picked a fancy restaurant to surprise her. I felt an incredible sense of anticipation. I spent the entire day preparing everything, from selecting the exquisite necklace as a gift, to having the assistant at the company book the restaurant and arrange fresh flowers. I even asked my coworkers to help me compose a sweet note to accompany the gift. I wanted Emily to feel that no matter how far apart we were, my love for her was as strong as the first day. That day, I left the office earlier than usual, feeling like a young man preparing for a first date. I had prepared every step carefully, hoping that the surprise would make Emily smile. I hadn't told her in advance, of course, because I wanted to see the surprised and happy expression on her face. The flight went smoothly, but my mind was a jumble of thoughts. I thought back to our past anniversaries, simple dinners at home, short trips filled with laughter. I wondered if this would be enough to rekindle the romance, but then I told myself, as long as she sees me making an effort, everything will be fine. When I arrived at the hotel, the hustle and bustle of the city seemed to cheer me up. I quickly checked in, showered, and changed into a neat suit that I believed Emily would always like. Then I took the gift and fresh flowers, deciding to go to Emily's room before we went out to dinner. I wanted to see her surprised eyes when the door opened. Standing in front of Emily's door, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from excitement. I imagined her opening the door, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. But as I reached up to knock, a giggle from inside made me pause. It was Emily's voice, the laugh I loved so much. But strangely, there was another laugh, deep and unfamiliar. I stood still, listening. Part of me hoped it was just a colleague, some kind of business conversation. But the laughter grew more intimate, mixed with indistinct words. A chill ran down my spine. "No way," I whispered to myself, but my feet automatically took a step back. I decided not to knock. My hand touched the knob and turned it gently. The door opened slowly, revealing a sight I would never forget. Emily was sitting on the sofa, smiling brightly like the morning sun, but the smile was not for me. Sitting next to her, shoulder to shoulder, was Jack, the colleague she had mentioned. My heart stopped when Jack gently placed his hand on Emily's shoulder, and she gave him no response except a soft smile. I stood there, frozen, for a few seconds. But the moment Jack leaned down and they shared a kiss, everything inside me seemed to shatter. The door was still ajar. I took a step back, feeling like the whole world around me disappeared, leaving only the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. I stood there, completely stunned. The world around me seemed to slow down, their laughter and words distant and indistinct, as if they were not real. Part of me wanted to rush in and confront Emily and Jack about what was going on, but the other wounded part of me wanted to run away from this painful scene. Finally, I stepped in. The door swung open completely, the soft click of its hinges echoing in the quiet space. Emily turned around, and the moment our eyes met, I saw her smile freeze, replaced by a look of shock and fear. Jack immediately dropped his hand from her shoulder, standing awkwardly, as if hoping to disappear from this room. "Alex?" Emily called my name softly, her voice trembling, as if she didn't know what to say next. Jack tried to say something, but all that came out were a few hesitant, incoherent words. He bowed his head, walking quickly towards the door, passing me without daring to look directly at me. The room became suffocatingly silent. "What are you trying to tell me, Emily?" I asked, feeling the coldness in my own voice. "This isn't what you think," she said, her eyes filled with panic. But how could I believe it? What I had just seen was so clear. "Not what you think?" I laughed, a bitter laugh. "Here I am, hugging and kissing my coworker, and you expect me to think otherwise?" Emily bowed her head, saying nothing. I placed the flowers and gift box on the table, feeling strangely relieved that I no longer had to hold them in my hands. I've been planning all day for a special evening. I thought maybe we needed a chance to remember why we fell in love in the first place. But it seems like you have other plans, right? Alex, I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I just feel lonely. Work is so stressful, and you chose to betray me? I interrupted her, not wanting to hear any more excuses. I was lonely, Emily, but I never betrayed you. We were together for 10 years. I deserve honesty from you at least. Emily didn't answer. I could see her struggling with herself, trying to come up with a reason, an explanation to make the situation easier. But nothing could erase what I had just witnessed. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, but they didn't make me feel sorry for her. They only deepened the pain in my heart. You don't need an apology, I said, my voice low and firm. If you chose him, then move on. But don't expect me to forgive you or pretend like nothing happened. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving Emily standing there, sobbing silently. The hotel hallway was long and cold, but my footsteps were heavy, as if dragging along all the memories, the love, and the trust I had for her. As the elevator closed, I looked at my reflection in the mirror, a man who looked completely unfamiliar, with tired, empty eyes. Back in my hotel room, I sat quietly on the couch, staring into space. I don't know how long I sat there, but it felt like time had lost its meaning. My mind was racing with unanswered questions. How could Emily do this? When did we get to this point? Where did I go wrong? I couldn't sleep. The images of that room kept replaying in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily smiling at Jack. The eyes she once gave me now belonged to someone else. I had thought that our love was unbreakable, that we could overcome any hardship. But the truth was that I was sitting here, alone, in a strange hotel, with a broken heart. I knew that everything had changed forever. My love, my faith, my marriage. All were broken pieces, scattered on a path that I no longer wanted to walk with Emily. But even as it hurt, I knew that this was not the end of me. It was the end of us. I thought that when I walked out of the hotel door that day, I would leave all the pain and hurt inside that room. But the truth was, all the emotions were like a raging wave, constantly surrounding me. When I got home, I had no idea how I drove. The familiar road was now a blur. My mind was filled with images of Emily and Jack. The house felt cold and unfamiliar. I walked in, feeling as if the air in the room was so thick and heavy that it was hard to breathe. I threw the keys on the table, looking around the space that used to be our home, now filled with broken memories. The framed wedding photo on the wall, the little gifts Emily had given me on our anniversaries, all of it now seemed to mock me for what I once had. I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark all night, thinking about everything, about Emily, about what had happened, and about the future. I didn't want to believe that our 10-year marriage could end like this, but the more I thought about it, the more I knew that things had gone too far. The next morning, I began packing Emily's things. I knew it had to be done, no matter how painful it was. I took large suitcases from the storage room, opened every closet, every drawer. Every item I touched brought back memories, but I tried to push them away. Her shirt, the dress she wore on our first date, the shoes she always called lucky. Everything reminded me of the Emily I loved. But now, that woman no longer exists. Emily has chosen to follow a different path, and I have no reason to keep her in my life. After packing up, I put all her things in the trunk of the car and drove to her mother's house. On the way, I kept thinking about how I would face them. I knew that Emily's mother would try to defend her, to find a way to convince me to forgive her, but I also knew that this time I would not give in. When I knocked, her mother opened the door, her face surprised to see me standing there with the suitcases. "Alex, what's going on? Did something happen?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I tried to keep my cool, but my voice was low and hard. "I brought Emily's things. She might need them." Her mother stared at me, as if she didn't understand what I meant. "Emily didn't tell us anything. She's on a business trip," she said. "I think you should ask her. But one thing's for sure. She won't be living with me anymore," I replied. not wanting to explain further. I set my suitcases down at the door, said a quick goodbye, and turned to leave. I could feel her mother's eyes on me, full of questions and confusion, but I couldn't face her any longer, for fear of losing the resolve I had just built. As I drove home, I felt a weight lifted from my heart, but at the same time, the void in my heart grew even larger. This was the first time in 10 years that I truly felt lonely, but I also knew that this was necessary. Emily had chosen her path, and I had to choose mine too. I didn't expect the confrontation with Emily to come so soon. Just as I got home and was about to enter the living room, the doorbell rang. I went to open the door, and there, standing in front of me, was Emily. She looked tired and seemed to have cried all the way home. Her eyes were red, her hair was a bit messy, but what caught my attention most was the look of panic mixed with remorse. "Alex, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice hoarse. I didn't invite her in, just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over my chest. "Go ahead," I replied curtly, trying to keep my cool despite the anger rising in my chest. "I know I hurt you," she said, her eyes starting to water. "I was wrong, but it wasn't like you thought. I just felt lonely. I was stressed out at work, and Jack was just someone I could talk to." "Sharing?" I interrupted, unable to contain myself any longer. "Emily, you call kissing your coworker, sneaking around with him on our 10th wedding anniversary, sharing? That's not how people share, Emily. That's betrayal." She bowed her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't mean to betray you, Alex. I love you, but I just feel lost." "Love me?" I laughed, a bitter laugh that even I felt was unfamiliar. "Emily, you call this love? If you loved me, you wouldn't need to find someone else. If you loved me, you would choose to talk to me about your problems, instead of finding someone else to comfort you." She raised her head, her eyes panicked. "I really don't want to lose you. Alex, give me a chance. We can start over. I will make it right, I promise. You are the most important person in my life." I was silent for a long time, trying to find my true feelings, but the only thing I felt was emptiness. I used to love Emily more than myself, but now, what she said was like the wind passing by my ears. "Emily, if I were the most important person, you wouldn't have betrayed me. Love isn't just words, it's actions, and your actions have proven otherwise." She didn't answer, just stood there, tears falling nonstop. I sighed, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. "You can take your things back. They're at your mother's, but what happened between us is over." "Alex, please. I beg you," she begged, taking a step toward me, but I backed away. "Don't make it harder, Emily," I said, feeling the pain rise in my chest again. "I have nothing more to say. It's been a long 10 years, but it all ended the moment you chose to betray me." She stood there, as if waiting for a miracle, but the miracle didn't happen. I closed the door, feeling like a chapter in my life had just closed. I went back to the living room, sat down on the couch, and stared into space. I felt relieved that I had said everything I needed to say, but the pain was still there, like a deep wound that would not heal. Emily was gone, but the image of her and Jack still haunted my mind. I know it will take time to get over it all, but at least I've made a decision. I have chosen not to live in a lie, not to let love become a burden, and although the road ahead may be lonely, I believe that I will find peace one day. It was the first step in leaving the past behind and moving toward the future. A future without Emily. A future just for me. After that encounter, I cut off all contact with Emily. I needed time to heal, and I knew that any further conversation would only add to the pain. But soon, news of Emily began to reach me through her friends and family. Emily tried to hold on to Jack, hoping that the relationship with him could become something lasting after the breakdown of our marriage. But Jack, as I suspected, had no serious intentions with her. He never left his wife, something Emily found out just weeks after I left her life. According to a friend of Emily's, Jack even told her outright, "This is just a fling, not love." This shock completely broke Emily. She not only lost the husband she once had, but also had her trust betrayed by the man she chose. That was probably the most painful lesson she had to learn, but not the final price. The scandal between Emily and Jack was not personal. News of their relationship began to spread throughout the company, and soon Emily was called into the Human Resources Department for a confrontation. Her company had strict policies regarding inappropriate relationships between coworkers, especially between superiors and subordinates. Jack, in order to protect his position, denied any feelings for Emily, saying that the relationship was entirely hers. As a result, Emily was fired for violating professional ethics. With no job, no career she had once been proud of, Emily was forced to move back in with her parents. I heard from relatives that she was depressed, withdrawn, and avoiding people. She tried to find new work, but her reputation in the industry was severely damaged. It seemed that everything she had built was now in ruins. But Emily's suffering didn't stop at losing her career. She tried to find new relationships, hoping to fill the void in her life. However, the men she met were either exploitative or unreliable. One time, she dated a married man without knowing it, only to find herself the third person in another story. As her professional and romantic failures piled up, Emily began to sink into depression. She spent more time isolating herself in her room, avoiding even her parents. Her old friends began to distance themselves from her, not because they hated her, but because they didn't know how to help her through this crisis. Emily's mother, who had once scolded me for leaving her things at their house, began to change her mind. One day she called me, her voice low and sad. "Alex, I don't know what to do with Emily. She's not the strong girl she used to be. She really regrets what she did to you. But I think, more than anyone, she hurt herself the most." I was silent at those words, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't go back to Emily, no matter how much she regretted it. What she had done had not only destroyed our marriage, but also destroyed the trust I had in her. But I couldn't find satisfaction in knowing she was paying for her mistakes. As time went on, Emily finally decided to seek therapy. It was the best decision she had ever made since our relationship broke up. Over the months of therapy, she began to come to terms with her mistakes, learn to forgive herself, and find meaning in her life again. I heard that she had started working small, temporary jobs to make ends meet. She also spent time volunteering at a nonprofit, hoping to regain a sense of contribution and self-worth. Emily never contacted me directly, but I received a letter from her through her mother. It was brief, just a few lines long. "Alex, I know I have no right to ask you for forgiveness, but I want to thank you for loving me and giving me the best 10 years of my life. I ruined that, and I will live with the consequences, but I hope you find happiness because you deserve it. Emily." I read that letter, not with hatred or pain, but with acceptance. Emily had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. The mistakes she had to pay for were lessons she had to overcome on her own, and I had learned to let go and move forward. The price Emily paid was great, so great that I doubt she will ever fully recover. But it was also the only way she could look back, learn, and hopefully one day find peace. As for me, looking back, I feel only one thing. The past is a lesson, not a burden, and my lesson is over. After all that had happened, I found myself at a crossroads in my life. My 10-year marriage was over, and the love and trust I once had for Emily had been betrayed. But as one door closed, I realized that perhaps another one had opened. To move forward, I needed to start over, not for anyone else, but for myself. The first few days after my divorce were the darkest of my life. I felt lost in my own home, a place that had once been a home, now an empty house, filled with painful memories. Every corner of the room, every object reminded me of Emily and the happy years we had shared. Sometimes I wondered if I would ever get over this pain. Nighttime was the hardest. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with 1,000 unanswered questions. I would blame myself. What did I do wrong? Was I not good enough? But then, gradually, I realized that those questions were useless. The past was gone, and the only thing I could do was learn to accept it. I started keeping a journal, something I'd never done before. Each page was a place where I poured out my emotions, sadness, anger, and hope. Writing helped me release and gave me a clearer picture of what had happened. I realized that despite Emily's betrayal, our relationship was not a complete failure. The years with her had taught me to love, to share, and now to let go. The next step was to reinvent myself. I started by making changes to my living space. I repainted the walls in my house, removed things that reminded me of Emily, and replaced them with things that represented who I was. I reorganized everything, not just in my house, but in my life. I spent more time with friends and family. During my 10 years of marriage, I was so focused on Emily and work that I neglected the people around me. Now they are my biggest source of support. I see old friends, attend gatherings, and feel the warmth of genuine friendship. A big part of my recovery journey was rediscovering some of my lost interests. I returned to photography, something I had loved since I was young. On weekends, I would take my camera out and capture beautiful moments of nature, people, and life. Through my lens, I realized that the world is still beautiful and that I can still find joy in the little things. I also started exercising regularly. Morning jogs not only help me stay physically fit, but also help clear my mind. Each step takes me further away from the painful past and closer to an energetic future. One of the hardest things I had to learn was to love myself. After years of focusing so much on Emily, I lost sight of my own worth. But over time, I realized that I couldn't depend on someone else to make me happy. Happiness had to come from within. I took a personal development course where I met people who had gone through similar situations. We shared our stories, learned from each other, and grew together. Those conversations helped me realize that I was not alone, that there were many people out there who were also struggling to overcome their pain. Another important part of this journey is learning to forgive. Forgiveness does not mean accepting what Emily did, but letting go of anger and resentment. I don't want to let those negative emotions control my life. Forgiving her is my way of freeing myself from the past. Gradually, I began to see life in a new light. Instead of seeing this breakup as a failure, I saw it as a lesson. I learned to appreciate what I had and to continue to develop myself. My work became more stable, and I even considered taking on a few new projects to challenge myself. I also volunteered, which I had never thought of doing before. Helping others not only brought me joy, but also made me feel like I was doing something meaningful. Every smile and every thank you from the people I helped was a healing balm for my soul. One autumn morning, as the warm sunlight streamed through the window, I received a letter from my lawyer. The paper informed me that the divorce was final. I sat there, letter in hand, staring at the neat lines, feeling as if I had just put a full stop to a long and chaotic chapter in my life. I didn't cry, nor did I feel pain. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. The 10-year marriage, with its beautiful memories and its deep wounds, was now completely in the past. There were no more attachments, no more fragments of memories to hold me back. I realized that, after all, I was free, not only from the broken relationship, but also from the pain and anger I had carried inside. I decided to go out and enjoy the fresh morning. I chose a small corner cafe, a place I have frequented in recent months. Here, I found peace in the fragrant cups of coffee and the cozy space. Sitting at a familiar corner table, I ordered a cup of cappuccino and quietly watched the people passing by outside the glass window. Thinking about Emily and our marriage no longer hurts me. Instead, I see them as valuable lessons. I don't deny that I loved her, that the years with her made me mature and stronger. But now, I understand that love doesn't always last forever. Sometimes it ends to open a new, better path. While sipping my coffee, I suddenly remembered the goals I had set but never achieved. I wanted to travel to faraway places, wanted to learn to play the guitar, wanted to write a book about my own life. Those dreams, because of being busy with work and family life, I let them fall into oblivion. But now, nothing can stop me anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened my list. I started writing down things I wanted to do, places I wanted to go. My first trip would be somewhere peaceful by the beach, where I could feel the waves and breathe in the fresh air. I also decided to sign up for guitar lessons, starting next month. Writing the book would probably take longer, but I was willing to make time for it. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a new sense of accomplishment. I realized that I was no longer bound by the past, that I was free to explore myself and the world around me. There was still much to live for and appreciate in life, and I was ready to walk my own path. That afternoon, I went for a walk through the park near my house where fallen leaves covered the path. Children were running around, their laughter filled the air, making me smile. I felt alive in every breath, every step. Although the past left scars, they no longer hurt me. On the contrary, they reminded me that I had overcome it, and I had every right to be proud of it. That night, for the first time in a long time, I sat in front of my bedroom window, looking up at the starry sky. I felt lighter than ever. My heart was no longer burdened by sad memories, but by faith in a brighter future. I had learned to forgive, not only Emily, but also myself. I had learned to love myself, and I knew that was enough for me to begin a new journey. My journey may have been a little lonely, but I was no longer afraid. I was free, free to live, to dream, and to build the life I truly wanted. And with every step, I knew I was getting closer to being the best version of myself. This was not just a release, but a new beginning.